low voice or something? Oh, sorry, okay. Well, actually, I was thinking about it today. I was a bit distracted in the church because Finn was ahead of me, and that's the way it was in college 21 years ago. You know, it's actually our 21st year anniversary. I was just talking to the bridesmaids about it earlier, and I was thinking this month I met you 21 years ago, Finn, so this is doubly emotional for me, you know. So if I was a little bit distracted in church, Father Michael, that was the reason, you know. I was thinking back to when I met Finbar first, and my first impression of Finn, that he was a very studious type, and actually he was the go-to guy in the class in terms of notes. He took the most perfect notes anybody could ever want. Even if you were in the class, you would still go to Finbar and get your notes. He's extended that now to list making, you know, and I know, like, you've been involved in the wedding. I've seen a fair few number of Finbar's lists. But you know, it wouldn't have been organised without him, so you know, that's all good. But of course, the fact that he is now giving training courses around the world, he's on the opposite side, and I'm still in UCC taking notes. Some 21 years later, I think tells its own story. So I don't know about the last half there. But you know, every cloud is a silver lining. And at least now I get free parking there so long, and even though I couldn't find any this morning, so every silver lining is a cloud, I suppose. But you know, Finn has actually doctored my notes here with Finn is wonderful. Okay, that comes later. But actually, Finn's passion for note taking was soon replaced with a long list of hobbies. Too long probably to mention here, but obviously Finbar's got a list of them. But you know, as Father Mike would say, he would always get stuck in with 110% commitment in all of them. Actually, even recently there, I was out at Finbar's house on Monday night, and he got this new software off Eamon O'Neill, who's down there somewhere, and about a mixing DJ, and you could see his eyes lit up. He was like a boy in a candy store, you know, and he's a great guy to be around. There's so much passion and enthusiasm he has for everything. And even though that long list of hobbies he's had, there's one enduring, and I think Dennis has already talked about it, which is his love for travel. Flying, from cycling across America in 1998 to becoming a pilot, he's always loved traveling. I know many people in the room would have some story about an adventure with Finn. But the one that springs to my mind is the time we were in Barcelona. Myself, Finn, Catherine, and a friend of ours not here, Paul Nugent. And anyway, so we were in Barcelona after 2 nights, and we decided to head up into the Pyrenees. And there was 2 designated drivers, Finbar and Paul. Finbar was driven a lot on the other side of the road. Paul who hadn't. And so anyway, off we went. Finn drove up, very expert driver. Got to the bottom of the Pyrenees mountains, and actually, quite similar to Jackie's story, Finn's first idea was to get lost up the mountain. You know, it wasn't like get to the hotel, it was let's get to the top, the highest mountain and get lost. So, anyway, Finn drove up, and you know, sort of think of Tour de France type territory here was hairpin turns, went past the snow line, went up as far as where it said icy roads. And so anyway, we got up to the very top, and it was a pleasant journey, you know. I mean, I'm not testing heights anyway, but we got up to the top, and we got out. Then Finn put his training hat on, and one thing about Finn is that he always pushes the boat out for himself and for his friends. So Finn thought it was a good idea at that stage to introduce Paul to driving in on the wrong side of the road. I was a bit hesitant, but so was Paul. But Finn is fairly convincing when he wants to be, right? And so anyway, he convinced Paul. Paul goes into the front seat with Finn, and I get in the back seat with Catherine. And the words that sort of stick with me to this day is when, just as we were suited up and we were about to slide off down, drive off down, Paul turns to Finn and goes, "You know these left-hand drives, the pedals, they're the same way around as at home." The fact that Paul couldn't get out of second gear on the way down. And yeah, I spent most of my time behind the paper and saying a few prayers and that kind of thing. It's right up there with the scariest journey I've ever been on. But we got down there, and we're here today. And but actually, as Finbar said, he's proposed to Jackie Murphy not once, which I didn't know, but twice in Venice. But I don't have the best hearing in the world, but I don't remember Finbar telling me the full story about his association with that city. In particular, this was not his first proposal in Venice. Okay.
Controversial.
I really like that dancing story, Finn. That was I'll be expecting a text later, but so anyway, the story as it was told to me was that Finn was travelling around Italy with an Italian-speaking friend, and they landed in Venice one night. And they obviously got lost in Venice. That was what Finn would want. They ended up in a restaurant. I didn't hear you mention the map anyway. They ended up in a restaurant in Venice, and so anyway, they had a lovely romantic meal together, and towards the end of the meal, Finn turns towards his friend and says, "So, how do you ask for the bill in Italian, like?" So his friend turns towards him and says, "Well, Finn, you just say solo finocchio." So Finn, now never the shyest guy in the world, saw the waiter at the opposite end of the room and just went, "Solo finocchio." Sorry, Finn, I'm doing this to my sorry. So I go, "Solo finocchio." And the waiter didn't bat an eyelid, but all the tables around turned towards Finn. And mostly girls, and they were sort of looking at this big Irish guy shouting "Solo finocchio" in the middle of the room. So, but anyway, they were sort of skittering laughing. So Finn was delighted with this turn of events. Like he was going, this is my first 2 words of Italian, and look at all the attention we're getting. So Finn goes again, "Solo finocchio." This time, everybody in the room had turned to Finbar, and again, about 3/4 of them were laughing. Some people were sort of looking at him a little bit strangely, and the waiter was going nowhere near him. So Finn, anyway, did have it in his head that it must be my Cork accent. So he turns to his friend and says, "Geez, this is great. My Cork accent is causing all sorts of eruptions here. This is brilliant. I really must learn the Italian language." And his friend turns to him and says, "Well, I suppose it could be your accent, Finn, or it could also be the fact that solo finocchio can mean I'm gay." I suppose it's true what they say when they say treat and the charm when it comes to holding in Venice. But having said that, I think it's a good sign of a man that he does not hold grudges, because Finn's Italian-speaking companion is in the room tonight. Paolo O'Leary. But so after travelling the globe, giving driving lessons, training courses, and proposing to waiters, Finn settled in Cork some years ago now, and I spent a lot more time with Finn. I was mostly doing the dancing, he was doing the texting. Well, we were a great partnership, really. But besides all the besides all the fun and passion Finbar brings to everything, he's a very loyal friend, and if you talk to any of his friends, he's probably the first guy you talk to if you have a problem. And I was very touched and honoured to be asked by Finbar to be. Am I getting feedback then? Sorry. Okay. But okay. I did want to say this though, that in that there's been a few occasions over the last few years where I've needed Finbar's help. And, he's always come true for me, so like I said, I was very honoured and touched to be asked to be best man today. So I think I can speak for all of Finn's friends when I say we were totally delighted that he took a fortune to bump into young Jackie Murphy in his doctor's car one night in town. And I suppose I had a good feeling about Jackie straight away. As Finn had told me, he had met a beautiful training manager for BMC. And well, I always thought Finn needed a small bit of managing. Not to mention a whole lot of training. But having met Jackie and got to know her, and as Finn has already talked about this, you could tell she's at least as good crack as Finbar when she's out. And there's a lot of magic or chemistry between them. And I've been on a fair few parties now with Jackie and Finn. But Yvonne told me a story about when Jackie was in UCC. And she was at a Champs Ball. And so anyway, there was a Champs Ball and she came home after a night out. And but she was living with her parents at the time. So Jackie got in the front door and went up to her room. But as you do after a night out, sometimes you think the party's still going on in your own room. I know it's happened to me, but then I'm already dancing up. I'm already out.